host. Thank you.
I don't have to repeat that today is Dr. K.K. Agarwal's birthday. May I have a special ovation for him, please?
Thank you.
We welcome you to this symposium on diet, health, and religion. We have a panel of distinguished speakers on the dais, along with our chief guest, Shri J. Veeraraghavan. He requires little or no introduction. Nonetheless, it is my privilege to place on record that he is a member, a long-standing member of Bhavan's family. Currently, he is chairman of the K.M. Munshi Institute of Educational Leadership and Management, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Delhi, Kendra. He is also the regional director of Shikshan Bharati of the Bhavan. Formerly, he was the director of the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Delhi, Kendra. Having retired from the Indian Audit and Account Service, he last served in government as secretary to the Department of Culture to the Government of India. He has a track record in India and abroad of having been advisor and consultant on various matters pertinent to education. Before I introduce all the other distinguished speakers on the dais, may I request Director of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Shri Ashok Pradhan, to give us the welcome address for all our guests. Shri Ashok Pradhan, Director, Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan.
Respected Veeraraghavan ji, Chairperson of this evening's program, Dr. K.K. Agarwal, respected representatives of various religions present here on the dais, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, a matter of great pleasure for me to welcome you all this afternoon in the Bhavan's precincts on a symposium dealing with diet, health and religion. Before I say a few words about the topic of the day, once again I congratulate Dr. K.K. Agarwal and wish him very many happy birthday, that being his birthday. Bhavan today has had 3 functions incidentally. In the morning there was a teacher's day. We thanked and expressed our gratitude to the teaching fraternity, who are the architects of the future India. And then we had a opera singers from Norway this afternoon, organized by Spitmakke for our Mehta Vidyalaya. And this evening we have this important function which talks about well-being, health and body into spirituality, because we have put in the religion in between. What we wish to examine today in this symposium is the relationship between what we eat, how does it affect our health, and how various religions look at this aspect of human living and life. Fasting is almost common in all the religions on certain days of piety, and also for the health reasons. Then what diet should be eaten when is also a matter which is talked about in certain religions. For example, in practice in Hinduism, there are certain months where certain things are not to be eaten, and there are certain months where certain things are recommended to be eaten. For example, between 3rd September and 2nd October, you are not supposed to use the curd. That is what is being said in the Vedic this thing, I mean the Ayurveda. Likewise, there are many examples where the diet is there to control Vat, Pitta, Kapha, whatever you may call it. Likewise, besides religion, it is the nature also which in a way tells you what to eat or what not to eat, what is good health. We live in India, we know the summer vegetables and fruits are all full of water because the body needs water. In winter, you go over to cauliflower and the fruits and other things which have less of water. That again is illustrated how nature is related to our well-being and health. The element of religion is extremely important because sometimes, though it looks a ritual, but the fact of the matter is that for good health also, not eating on certain days, not eating periodically on certain days, it cleanses your system. All that you know, I need not dwell upon it any further, but I think the inputs from ladies and gentlemen sitting in the dais in this respect would throw perhaps a fresh light on this subject, and I am sure all of us are going to be benefited immensely from this program. I welcome you once again in this hall on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I invite our chief guest, Shri J. V. Raghavan, to give us the inaugural and keynote address. Shri V. Raghavan.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, gurus and scholars of various religions, respected members of the audience, dear friends. I am not sure if I did the right thing in agreeing to be the chief guest and keynote speaker on this occasion, but that is because I can never say no to either Dr. K.K. Agarwal or to my colleague Shri Ashok Pradhan. In the presence of so many scholars, I dare not make a keynote address or inaugural address, but by virtue of my seniority and grey hair, I can certainly be the chief guest and make a few general observations, because our scholars and speakers will go into greater detail on many of these matters. A few general observations on the topic of today as it occurs to me. The first point I would like to draw attention is that all religions, almost all religions, treat food as something holy and sacred. For instance, in Hindu religion, in the Vedas, say Annam Brahme Divyajanat. Anna is Brahman. Anna, from Brahman comes everything. Annam Brahme Divyajanat, Anna Jatani Bhutani. All living things are coming from food. So there is this identification in another prayer, Vishnu Sahasranam, which many Hindus recite. We have Bhojanam Bhukta. Both are identified as two names of God, Brahman. So there is a certain amount of sacredness, and you find in Christian prayer, Lord, give us this day our daily bread. And also there is a prayer, Lord of food, give us the food that will bring, this is again from a Hindu prayer, give us the food that will bring health and strength, not diseases. Bless us, bless him who brings it to us, bless all the bipeds and quadrupeds. This is a Vedic prayer. So there is a certain amount, and in Islam, Allah is referred to Al-Razak, giver of rizq or livelihood or food. So like that one can quote from different religions. I will not take too much of your time on this, because many of you can recall the references to food and as something holy, something important. You would all have been seeing the television advertisement these days about food and admixture in food, milawat. Milawat se jang, that is the title of the advertisement. It asks, आप खाना खाते हैं या खाना आपको खाता है? That is the question which they are asking. So that is the importance. From the sacredness, we come to the other extreme where mixtures in food or unwarranted food or improper food is destroying even the basic health, leave alone being holy and sacred as envisaged in many of the religions. Now the other point which struck me was, if you look at all the various religions, there is a great emphasis on moderation, warning against overeating, indulgence. Gluttony in Christianity is considered definitely a sin, and in the Bible it says in the Ecclesiastes, if thou sit at a bountiful table, be not greedy upon it, eat as becometh a man, and devour not, be not insatiable, a very little is sufficient for a man well nurtured. Sound sleep comes of moderate eating. This is from Apocryphal Ecclesiastes from the Bible. Again in Islam, Sadi relates that a person was sent, Sadi said that a Persian king sent a physician to Prophet Muhammad for counsel, and Muhammad, indicating his tongue, said to control the tongue of and the sense organ associated with it is important. And Sadi adds, only when hunger overpowers you should eat, and then draw away your hands before the hunger is quite satisfied. Who eats too much suffers too much. This is a quotation from Sadi. And again you can find similar quotations in Ayurveda. There is a tradition that 1/3 of the stomach should be filled by solid food, 1/3 by liquid water, and 1/3 is left for what they call the tridoshas, which is basic kapha, pitta and other thing in Ayurveda. So moderate eating is emphasized in almost all religions, and the many practices of fasting, which my colleague Ashok Pradhan also referred to, roza or fasting, is common in almost all religions. Apart from physical health, they also help you to get control over your own senses in some way, in self-control and in advance towards spiritual awakening. Fasting is an important tool. It gets a control over oneself. How much is adequate, of course, will differ from person to person. If you are Vijay Kumar, or if you are if you are a wrestler, sumo wrestler, your requirements will be very different. If you are a laborer working 8 hours a day, your requirements will be very different from a person who is has a very sedentary job. But whatever it is for each person to decide what is adequate and eat with that which is just less than adequate. So what is called functional requirements of each individual may be different, but moderation is certainly very important in all religions, in all practices for good health and for spiritual advancement. In yoga also, in yama niyama, moderation is very much emphasized, and control over our eating habits is one of the important ingredients for preparation for yoga. Now there are many specific restrictions on particular foods in different religions. Some of these may have spiritual or religious grounding. Some others may have geographical or historical antecedents, and it is necessary to know these reasons. Some of these practices is very difficult to understand also today, because I remember in my early childhood, I come from a district in the south, Tanjore district, a very fertile area. We used to have lot of ghea and papaya growing wild, and many people will not even touch them. Certain groups and classes of people will not eat either ghea or papaya. There was no ostensible reason why we should not do it if you look at it scientifically, because they are using kaddu and other similar fruits. So why not this? It may have been a social custom at some point to leave. I mean, this is no longer so the case today. If you go today, you will not get that situation. But it was a situation some 40 years, 50 years back. It may have been that certain vegetables were left for people general consumption, just for the asking, people can take it without having to buy it. This is in rural areas. This may have had some economic or other considerations in those days. But therefore there may be some good reasons other than religious for certain practices, but there may be other good religious reasons as well. Now when we think of religious reasons, I will not take too much of your time. As I said, I will make only certain general observations so that we may have more detailed presentations and discussions subsequently. But when we look at it from the Hindu point of view, religious point of view, about food and our own spiritual or other inclinations, there is a certain theory propounded in the Bhagavad Gita on this. In Bhagavad Gita, the universal spirit, God, Brahman, whatever you call it, is bound to nature, which is called Prakriti, by means of a bonding which consists of three types, gunas, sattvam, rajas and tamas. Three types of bonding was there. And food is classified into three categories according to their liking by people of one nature or other. Of course, the Bhagavad Gita is also very clear that no one is pure sattva, no one is pure rajas, no one is pure tamas. There is always a mixture of all the three in all living things, including man. But according to the dominance of one or the other, you may like one type of food but not the other. And the point made there is, in respect of rajas for instance, rajas is the most dominant characteristic of human beings, and it says katvamla lavanatyushna tikshna ruksha vidayinaha ahara rajasa sheshta dukkha shoka maya pradaha. It says katu, bitter, sour, hot, very hot, and very cold, all these extreme foods. These are which create suffering and dukkha, pain, and these are the ones which Rajasic people like. Rajasic people are supposed to be very active and vigorous, unlike Sattvic people who are very, we should say, noble thinkers, writers, philosophers, and people of a higher evolved mind. They are the Sattvic people who are more towards the divine and the spiritual aspects than the Rajasic people who are very active and very energetic. And they like these extreme kinds of foods. And as they progress from Rajasic to Sattvic foods are supposed to be those that give you health, arogyam, which are sweet, which are simple. They are called Sattvic foods, and the Sattvic people have a preference for those kinds of foods, not this extreme sour or hot or salty or other kinds of very hot or very cold foods. They like simpler foods, healthful foods, and foods which are sweet. Of course, there is a reference to tamasic foods also. Tamasic people are neither like the first or second category, but they are very indolent, very sleepy, very lazy. And they take foods, they say 3 hours after cooking. They don't take fresh food. So this is one of the interpretations. Fresh foods are very important. So tamasic, the foods are not fresh, there is an indication that it leads to laziness. Now this relationship between food and one's nature and one's attitude to values and spiritual awakening is not unidirectional. If these kinds of people like one kind of food, eating of those kinds of food will also result in consequential thinking process. So there's a bidirectional relationship. Either you can have a virtuous circle or you can have a vicious circle. Either you can go down or you can go up. So both possibilities are there in the dietary system. So the diet influences you and you influence the diet. You choose the diet and the diet chooses you. तो आप खाना खाते हैं, खाना आपको खाता है is a very valid statement which has been made in the advertisement. I think I will not proceed further. I will stop with these very few initial remarks. Like all of you, I look forward to the very eminent speakers who will be presenting their views from very different religions. And before concluding my observations, I would like to say that Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan has believed in the unity of all religions, fundamental unity of all religions. That means there is diversity, there are different faiths, there are different aspects, but there is a fundamental unity also. And one of the earliest books published by us was by Dr. Bhagwan Das, Bharat Ratna, who was the first Bharat Ratna, incidentally. Bharat Ratna Bhagwan Das, who gave this book called Fundamental Unity of All Religions. Subsequently, Nani Palkiwala also published a small book by this day. Bhagwan Das' book is a big volume, but Nani Palkiwala spoke a few lectures. It came out as a small volume, but almost similar title. We also have Sarva Dharma prayers in our school as a normal practice. We have a choir and we have all religious prayers, and we believe in all religions and the value of all religions, and therefore it has been a particular pleasure to me to have this series which Dr. Agarwal has so ably conceptualized and implemented it. He has brought all religions together and making them address our common problems, issues and challenges. I thank him and all of you for this opportunity to say a few words on this occasion. Thank you.